I'm not looking at the TV. Jeremy.
Did you guys, really quick before we're live, did you guys
Oh, yeah.
see all that action on Sunday? I was down there.
through the build, raise. It's either build or raise. It's changed, every administration changes the name of the grant program. So it started as Tiger, and then it went to build, and then it went to raise, and it's probably changing names again. It took us 6 tries to get it, so it's not something that you can easily get.
I like Tiger.
Yeah, I think it was Tiger under Obama, and then Trump changed it to build, and then Biden changed it to raise. And then I don't know,
What the new one is.
back to another one after that. But it's one of those grants that, you know, we can only submit one for the city each year, and they're pretty intense. So being able to get it is great, and then we were able to get all of our documentation and everything before the administration changed, so our funds are not at jeopardy for anything that may be a philosophical difference between, you know, those higher political levels that seems to be happening right now with grant funds. So those are pretty well locked in. So we divided it into 3 phases because of the funding and not knowing how that was all gonna come together. So phase 1 was the realignment of 22nd, that finished in December. So now, if you're coming out 22nd and you hit Micklecrest, you don't have to do a weird left to go straight. You can continue going straight, it's much wider, it's much nicer, it's actually somewhere you might wanna walk, go figure.
Actually looks really good, right?
Yes, it's much more lovely, we have cycle tracks, so that's one of the things that's a little bit more unique that we're starting to do, so you'll see the far right where we've got like the cyclist. But once you get up actually to McGillcrest, what happens is you actually ride up on the sidewalk, so we made them wider instead of having them in the street. And then you come down for the crossing, so you can continue to move like a vehicle, and then you actually make your way back up to the sidewalk. So it's marked and it's extra wide versus having that lane because of all the trucks and things of that nature. It makes it a little bit safer, and it's actually more cost effective too, to do it in that way. So now we're starting on phase 2. So phase 2 is actually, in terms of size, the smallest. So we're pretty much doing from 20, it's about like 21st-ish and a half to 25th. So we're making all the improvements to that section starting this summer. So if you're going through in that area, of course, you know, lanes are gonna be closed, things of that nature. So that's what's happening now, and then our last section will be 12th to 19th, so we're finishing design right now on that, and we're hoping to go out to bid this winter. That does involve the railroad, which is why it's been our 3rd phase. We have had them out to do sort of some different conversations to talk about the crossings and safety and things of that nature. And so in a perfect world, we'd be able to go out for bid and then hopefully start construction next summer on that one. I don't know if that's gonna happen. We may be having to push it out a little bit. It is a much bigger area. And we are dealing with some creek things as well, it's looking like. So that one may take a little bit longer, but we do have the funding for it. And right now, bids are coming in under. They just started coming in under in the last couple of months. I just got one on another project that's about $1.5 million under than what we thought. The Gilcrest came in the 2nd phase a little bit under what we thought, so that's helpful as well. It's kind of helping us move some money for if they go back up again, or for those unexpected things. This CRA doesn't collect anymore, it just stopped collecting last year. So its funds have gone back, it will go back to the tax rolls this coming tax year. And we'll close this one out once all the funds are spent, but that won't happen until after we get through phase 3. So this is another one where, you know, we're not collecting anymore, but we'll still be working on it for a few more years to wrap it up. Any questions about that? It's nice if you drive out there. If you did, you've been there before and now, I mean, even just getting rid of the tow yard is what we nicely called it. You know, and just cleaning that area up. The adjacent property owners in that area actually wanted sort of the green space and things that are there now, and they're actually the ones that are maintaining it. So a lot of those enhancements were through negotiations and discussions with the property owner saying like, hey, we actually want these things and we'll take care of them because we don't have the capacity to do that. And so, yeah, it was definitely one of those things where a lot of the property owners want to kind of see some of those things. So it's been a nice project in that respect. And it's one that, you know, a lot of these property owners have wanted for a really long time. So although it's painful to go through construction, I think as everybody knows, you know, hopefully as things are improving, they'll feel that as well. And then we're already starting to see some growth in that area as well with some of the vacant sites. People are starting to to outreach on, pre-apps and, potential development and things of that nature, now that they see that the money is really going into it, the project really is happening. So that's been a good one that's happening out in that area. And then downtown, I'll take a couple. Tori and I are kind of splitting downtown right now, so we don't have a designated person. And then we have actually a project coordinator who is helping us as well, who came on board this fall. So one of the things happening downtown, and that is Tori
Just
100%, so I am not going there with that one. One of the things downtown that you're gonna see, we're continuing streetscape. So every year, the board puts about 4 million into their budget to do anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 block faces. It's too much to do all of downtown at once. And so usually kind of what happens is in the summer, you'll see several block faces that are kind of underway in construction, and then in the fall, we kind of kick off the next set, and so we kind of can rotate them enough that we're able to get, several done at any point in time. The ones just up front were kind of some of the recent ones. So, it's improving the sidewalks, it's redoing the street trees, it's putting in the infrastructure for water, for flower baskets, or for electricity, things of that nature that we just haven't really had in the downtown. And so upcoming, straight off the presses. So this summer, you'll start to see work on commercial between Center and Chemeketa, and then also between Front and commercial. And then we'll kind of, in the later this calendar year, you'll start to see work kind of between Court and Ferry, also on commercial, so kind of focusing in that area. And then just adjacent to the New Ribbonwood apartments, we'll be doing some improvements in that area as well. So that's just one of those where kind of everything's always under construction.
What type of improvements?
Yeah, so it's gonna be landscaping, water infrastructure, new sidewalks. One of the things that's happening, and I think next year is when it's gonna hit harder. So one of the interesting things about a lot of the downtown properties is a lot of them were built with vaults back in the day. Not all of those vaults are known. Some of them were sealed off, so current property owners don't even realize, but the vaults extend under the sidewalks. So I know maybe 10 years ago, we tried to sort of do an analysis of all the different buildings downtown to know where are the vaults and where aren't the vaults, because that would be an infrastructure issue down the line that we would want to be aware of for.
Excuse me, when you say vaults?
Like, it's literally like it's like you go down to the basement and there's like a passage and it kind of goes down under, and it's under the city's like sidewalks and things where people, what they use them for, storage.
Those used to be about 5 feet lower. And they delivered coal down to the shafts. And it was
There we
the
go.
old boardwalk in downtown. Then when they built it up, they basically became tunnels under the sidewalk. And it never really should have been, because they don't take carload in the event that the vehicle gets on them.
And some people chose to fill them in, some people don't even know that they have them. When we were doing, a lot of where the bulb outs are throughout downtown, when that process was happening, is kind of when Public Works was trying to do an assessment to figure out where they all were. But private businesses and property owners didn't always want to give access, they didn't have to. And so the city was able to collect some of that information, but not all of that information. And so part of what's also happening as these improvements are being done, because we're ripping up the sidewalks, if there's vaults, things of that nature, we're going in, we're filling them, we're making them sound, but we don't always know that they're there. But I do know, for instance, this next phase, when we do work on Liberty Street, almost every property actually has a vault just up here around the corner, except for maybe one, but we won't know that until we dig everything up. So that's gonna be a year where instead of doing like 3 or 4, we're probably only gonna be able to do 2, because there's so many vaults that we're gonna have to fill
I just think that's fascinating to.
And people don't know that they have them either until we get there, we're like, oh, you have a vault, what? Because if you go down in their space, it's just a sealed in wall, so they have no idea that it's there. And they were all developed prior to us having record of those types of information, so it's kind of a trial and error. So that's one of the fun things that you find.
And these vaults are separate from the tunnels that went from like the state of Oregon to US Bank? Or is it the same?
I have no idea.
You're talking about where there's the purple glass, like,
No, so down at, so Ladenbush,
Yeah.
US Bank, if you go downstairs, there's a really old, and you can actually see there's still railroad down there. And, it must, I bet.
So
it was
it's probably part of the same, it would make sense that maybe it was part of the same, but I don't.
But I think
don't
it
know
ties
that.
into what you just mentioned, and they do tours.
Yeah, it goes like all the way up to the state hospital.
Isn't that just fascinating?
And the person in the hospital were tied, et cetera, et cetera.
And we're not
There's a lot
touching
of
that.
weird ones. There's a lot of weird
That's what you're on.
infrastructure. The problem they had with private owners abandoning them during development 15, 20 years ago is that's actually within the right of way. And so they couldn't fill them in. Because the city at that time had the perspective that, you know, you're in our footprint, and so it muddled things, but I applaud that they're finally getting it resolved. Someday they're gonna put an HS-20 truck on top of that sidewalk and it's gonna punch through.
Well, the next thing is eventually all of downtown will have new streetscape, so we'll be able to along the way. I think part of what you're speaking to too, and we run into this sometimes, is, you know, if a private developer is doing something and it's in the right of way and it's not part of a project we're doing, unless we have funding source, which sometimes we have urban renewal funds or we can come up with something to help, we really don't have funds to do anything. But if it's tied to something we're doing, then we can find a way to kind of make it happen. And I do think in the last, I've been here for almost 16 years now. And I don't know how things worked prior for sure, but I do feel like, especially in the last 10 to 12 years, there's been a real focus on like, hey, how do we make this work? Or like, how do we find a way to like partner together and get those things done? Because they're expensive and you don't know that they're there. And, you know, and the streetscape is a great way to now start to fill in those gaps of like, okay, you haven't done it, let's jump in and help for sure. So, that's gonna continue. I mean, we've got a lot of streetscape left to go, so it's just one of those things that you're always gonna see happening downtown. The other thing that you're gonna start to see downtown, sorry, I love sharing this and I hate it because I'm like, it's the project that like nobody wants to be like, hey, guess what? Paid parking is coming downtown. It's gonna start on July the 10th.
Oh, it's the.
It's gonna start I think when you were here, I said the 1st, and then we had a little switcheroo with the.
July something.
Yeah, there's an SRC that parking had to submit where tied to enforcement to get rid of some of the stuff that everybody hates, like the once per block and the time limitations and stuff, and that staff report wasn't able to go on the date that they had hoped it was gonna go. And so it has to have 2 readings, and then we still have to wait 30 days. So that pushed us to July the 10th versus the 1st, which is what we were shooting for. So that was sort of that small little tweak that we had to make. But it is starting on the 10th. You will start to see work happening down here on the 16th. Machines are coming on the 16th. Signage is starting to get swapped out on the 16th. We will have an app. I just got the link to test it this morning, so we're hoping to be able to release that in the next couple of weeks. I think Tori included something in your pamphlet or in your packets too, as we've had information.
Yeah, we've had the postcard, it's been previous,
The
I
BP Salem
sent it
is
to
the
you.
title.
when it first came out, yeah, it's BP, Salem.
Mm-hmm.
We're running our own app or we're using a third
Nope.
party?
So our parking vendor has their own app. What we did do was white label it. So we're not running it under their logo or anything. We did our own branding, our own design. We own the rights to all of the graphics and everything. So it's their infrastructure, which makes it an easier, obviously, connection versus bringing in another third party that has to sync in with that and the handhelds. But we were able to make it true to us, which helped expedite things tremendously. So there will be an app that you can use for downtown, but you can also use the app outside of downtown. So if you're out at the Capitol, if you're at the airport, the app will work citywide for any of our pay stations. We're just launching it in tandem with downtown. There's been a lot of confusion that you don't have to use the app. You can pay by card, you can pay by coin at the machines themselves. For coin, there is no minimum. So if you are popping in somewhere for 15 minutes and you just want to throw in a quarter, it's totally fine. If you're using the app, it's a little bit longer than that because it's tied to the credit card, the $1.50 minimum, which is the hourly rate, same rate the rest of the city. We're not making it more expensive downtown. And the parking structures will remain free for visitors and customers. That's sort of the biggest messaging is we're not taking away all the free parking. We're just saying on street is gonna transition, all of the parking structures will remain free for visitors and customers. Is kind of the current plan.
$1.50 an hour.
$1.50 an hour, yes. Yeah, and it's the same in the capital, so there's no difference. Also, we're gonna be, parking is allowing crossover. So if you're in the Capitol for a meeting and you still have, say, 45 minutes left of what you purchased, and you're like, oh, I wanna pop downtown for whatever, the reason might be, you're not in a new parking zone, your parking will transfer over and vice versa. Versus every zone you go to, like kind of in Portland, you're in the Pearl and you decide to go to Northwest, it's like, oh yeah, I had 20 minutes left, but it doesn't count in this zone, so now I have to pay to park again. We're gonna have it all be kind of flexible. So once again, just trying to make it it's a big change for people.
Sure.
So like, what can we do to make it as easy on customers, on businesses, on employees, on residents, and on staff as possible? And then after that first year, staff will be gathering information and feedback. And then if tweaks need to be made, then that can happen, but it's kind of, how do we just make the system as easy as possible up front? On-street parking will be 12 hours. So, I mean, if you really wanna park there for 6 hours and pay for that, I mean, go for it. A parking permit would be a lot less expensive. But it gets away from staff tracking down employees that are parking on the street, because right now employees are not permitted to be parking on the street downtown. So there's, some of those things that'll just open up a little bit, is kind of the plan, so that's happening. Yeah, it's tense.
So are they getting rid of the fee structure that was on the business?
The parking tax, so the parking tax is gonna be phased out, they can't remove it immediately, so the way that the parking tax goes is it gets issued on, it's like July 1st, July 2nd of each year. Some people choose to pay it in increments. Some people pay it upfront, but unfortunately, there has to be at least a transition because there's not gonna be any money coming in from the pay stations upfront. The general fund has historically backfilled downtown, so the general fund has helped pay for cleaning, security, and those funds are no longer there. So there has to be sort of an in-between where the tax is gonna continue for at least 1 year. The goal is to remove it after the first year. And then the machines will kick on, and then hopefully before the tax gets approved, which happens in June of each year, staff will look at the numbers to make sure that, is it bringing in enough, and then can they go ahead and then remove that parking tax? So it's unfortunate, you can't, we can't just turn the water off and say, because maybe if we could have gotten machines going 6 months ago, you would have, but either way, there has to sort of be some sort of kind of a phasing in and out, because there's just no other resources. If we got rid of the tax and the machines weren't bringing in right away, which it will take time, we won't have funds to pay for security, we won't have funds to pay for cleaning, there's nothing there, and unfortunately, we can't rely on the general fund as historically been able to do, because the only other source of revenue that comes in down here is parking permits. So there's not a lot that feeds into that budget, it's parking tax and parking permits, and that's been it for years, and that particular fund has not been able to support itself for at least 4 or 5 years.
Will this affect some of the businesses that have actually occupied parking spaces?
So I know that that's something that staff is looking into. I know Kristen, our director at Public Works, have been talking about, does that fee structure need to change because there's a different cost associated, and I believe they've been putting together a new fee structure for how that's gonna work, because now there's sort of a new revenue associated with those spaces. So those are gonna be they're already being looked at in terms of like, hey, what's the fair and equity piece to all of this exactly? So yeah. Everyone needs, it's the whole, like, everyone just be treated the same, if you wanna take a spot, what is that gonna cost you, whether it's you're parking for the day, whether you're, have an outdoor space so that people can feel as though they're, everyone's being treated fair and equitably. The one thing I'll say about the tax is, the nice thing is, we are still providing free parking for business and customers, or customers and visitors in those parking structures, so it's not as though we're getting rid of it entirely and saying, hey, guess what, you're still paying the tax to support the system and we're charging everywhere. We are still able to provide some free to those folks, so that's where it's kind of like, that phasing piece.
Kind of off topic, but not really. the parking structure that connects, the Mervyn's, the downtown. There was talks of that, kind of sits right,
Meredith.
yeah, the Marion, is that being demolished and rebuilt, or is it?
We'll talk about that in a second.
Is it on your list?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's, we've got a whole improvement project actually slated
This is
for
why I
next.
said I had to do this first.
Yeah, it's like, that's the deal.
Yeah, no, there's a whole improvement project set for the Marion. And I think everyone will be super excited about it, cause I think it's gonna make it really nice, and it is our least used parking structure. Just due to it's always kind of been one of the lesser used because of its location being a little bit further out. But as downtown, I mean, downtown really doesn't have anywhere to grow except for north at this point. You know, we are almost fully built out in downtown. And so growth is going to continue to happen north, and so that particular parking structure is going to start to see a lot more demand in the next, 3, 4, 5 years. And so the project that, Tori has and the improvements that are being made is really kind of tying into knowing that, there's gonna be a lot more demand out there, and how do we get ahead of that and sort of make it something that, people enjoy seeing and enjoy using at the same time. There's a lot, I know, I'm sorry.
No, great information. Thank you, it's awesome.
Well, thank you all for your time. I'll let Tori talk about the Marion or Block 45 or whatever funness he has.
Whatever, fun this thing's there. On the topic of the Marion, there is a new sign. So as Sarah mentioned, there's a lot of movement to the north. We have new housing in Riverwood. So utilizing that to its full potential is the ideal. So hopefully with the new paid parking coming online, the new housing, and a lot more activity, redevelopment happening to the north, this will be a key piece to that. So what we've had over the years is some maintenance issues. We've got a lot of unhoused population dwelling in the stairwell. There are really high walls that are along the street side on all sides around the perimeter. So those are things that are being removed, changed. The code requires it to have screening because it has parked cars. So it'll have more of a translucent wall. So there'll still be a barrier, but you'll be able to see through it for safety and to hopefully deter unhoused loitering in those spaces. The opening of the stairwell is a critical one. We've had to go through, do a lot of maintenance, brake clean those stairs repetitively to the point where structurally they're getting, that's one of the reasons why we're looking at doing this, these improvements to the parking structure, is the maintenance over the years with all that type of wear. That's not tied to, parking your car and just moving. There's been some dwelling and some waste and things like that we've had to address, and so it's taken a toll. So in an effort to clean all that stuff up, make it feel safer, there's other upgrades happening with it as well. So that's where you get that open stair. There'll be solar panels on the top. These blades create kind of a texture, but it's also in an effort to they'll go in and they'll bore holes into the structure and make sure that everything's sound. There's areas that need to be fixed, they'll fix those areas, but where they're going in to look at the structure, these blades will go into and fill those holes. So along both sides, you'll have that. Isn't that photo too?
The night one's really cool.
It's really retro looking, I love it.
Yeah, they took the design off of kind of the old motels that people are starting to renovate and kind of call it the, V and make them kind of cool, and that's kind of the theme they were going for, was kind of those taking motels and making it something of a.
Ah, very cool.
Yeah, as far as it being underutilized, for me, I always liked going there, as far as frequenting with business, either the Cinnabar or the mall, just accessing the mall from that point. I always liked that structure, so it's always surprised me. I think it's just the location, and now we're starting to see the housing and other things catch up to it. So I think it's just ahead of its time. Since there was the less activity, it's just like anywhere else, if there's a sidewalk that's unutilized, kind of weird, walled out, kind of private situation. This was just like that, where it was like, if it's not activated, we're not using it, other people come in and occupy that space. So hopefully by making it more lit, open, feel safe, and the users will come in and keep out that other
When is the construction or
good timing. Good.
okay, sorry, I'm just looking at me, I'm like,
So, we're going through permitting and everything right now, we'll go out to bid this month. Award the contract, it's like, hope to start construction January.
oh. Maybe here before me now.
Or Skype.
I don't know about the Sky Bridge, I think the
It's
Sky Bridge is staying.
Yeah, we're not taking it down for this. We actually don't have ownership 100% of the sky bridges. It's kind of a dual situation, so it depends on the developer on the other side. Just kind of like when Redevelopment went in and they took them down, so there's sort of a shared cost associated with those that we split with the property owners.
Cause that connects to the old Nordstrom's side and then Mervyn or.
The Coles,
Coles.
yeah, it connects into the Coles side.
Yeah, and then does it connect into TJ Maxx? Or like thinking of something?
And that
Just Coles.
that structure too is has our highest, so like if you have a larger truck or something like that, you're gonna fit into that structure where you're not gonna fit into, say, here at Chemeketa or at Liberty, so higher vehicles fit into Marion, which is the other sort of nice piece to it as well, especially with paid parking coming on the street. Folks will have that as an option to park, so making those improvements hopefully, will help in that respect as well.
It's exciting.
Sorry to bounce around. So. Use this, sorry, I use this for both, block 45 and block 50. So block 50, I don't have a slide for, but you see this as you come in, it's across the street from here, it's the old King Gospel Mission. We've had acquired that site, what, 20?
Oh, we assembled it,
17
so
or
it took
something
a
like
few
that?
years, yeah, right around then.
Yeah.
It was
So
an assembly process.
we had been talking to the New Gospel Mission when they were looking to relocate. So the whole time we were interested in the property. There were a lot of unique circumstances, a lot of different lots, configurations. Just wear and tear to the building. There are going to be some cost burdens to development. And that's typically when we come in. Usually these unique sites, they have cleanup issues like this did. They used to have an old gas station back way before the Gospel Mission was there. Block configurations, old building. So we went through, acquired it, tore it down. Now, as far as that status, we went through a public process to solicit and find a developer. We partnered with a developer and we're working through contract now. And in the meantime, we're preparing that site. So we're going through environmental assessment. There's some additional, the way that the developments, the direction it's going, it's looking like there'll probably be some residents on the ground floor in some areas, not everywhere. And to make that happen, there was a DEQ Department of Environmental Quality, no further action, that allowed commercial retail to not dwelling. So now that we're looking at dwelling, we have to do some additional environmental work out there to make that happen. And then we have archaeological and geotech studies that are happening.
Archaeological.
Yeah, archaeological, anytime you're near a river, major river area, there's a likelihood that you could find Native American artifacts. So just to make sure.
Booby
Just
traps,
thinking
rolling
that.
balls, snake
Yeah.
pits,
And
you never know what you're gonna find. Ark of the Covenant.
pottery.
Grab your bull up in your hat, let's go.
Yeah,
Took a lot of pottery out of the airport.
I don't know if he's coming, but you know, I can step in.
There's a lot of pottery at the airport.
Yeah,
Good
there's
stuff out there.
shoot a movie.
Yeah.
pretty much any site, if we own it, we do an ARC kind of analysis.
It's basically gotten to that point, since we have kind of problematic areas anyway, they're usually in a floodplain or near a waterway. So it's just something, we just roll it in there, like,
Just make sure it's compliant.
just wanna check all those boxes, make sure we don't have anything, because the last thing you wanna have happen is you get to a point of construction, and you have field crew out there getting everything, like, getting your foundation situated, all of a sudden you discover something and then you're working backward. We'd rather get ahead of it and have a green light so we can just keep it moving rather than, I'm sure that would still be a hiccup, we probably still have to address it. In fact, when we've done like Second Street, because it's a similar situation, near the close enough to the Willamette, we had to have basically someone on call, not someone on site all the time, but you have to have a contact in the event that process of disturbing soil under some kind of fact. Yeah, you have someone that can come out and
Respond to the police station was all delay.
They found stuff.
No, they actually found as much, it was getting the process in place to go through all the excavated material. Lots of time and money.
So it's not necessarily waterways, it's kind of anywhere.
It could be anywhere. We have, the staff trying to get ahead of it and map out areas so that developers tries to get to a point of creating some certainty, because if you were looking at real estate transactions, that's one of those things that you want to be aware of. So try to get ahead of it where maybe there've been no artifacts found. I don't know exactly what goes into the process of mapping it out to be able to say you're kind of in an archaeological area, so anticipate, like if you do earthwork, you'll have to have that. Have to do the survey. Basically go out there with spacing and drill down to the point and see if they find anything.
And all that
It's
has
like-
to work in conjunction with the state, which is part of what kind of delays things too. The permits have to run through the state, and then when you're done with your report, they still have to review it and accept it. And the findings, so that's part of the delay. It's not just like Tori getting the contractor out there and getting it going. We can move those things pretty quick. It's that we have to work with our other agencies. on
No, I
all of
think
this.
this.
It's gonna get recorded for
yeah.
everyone to have access to that.
I think this information is so valuable. I mean, to us as a board, but even more valuable to the public, because as a, individual that just drives by consistently to these vacant lots that have been vacant forever, it's like, well, what is going on? What is the holdup? Why aren't we doing something? And so that kind of plays into the permitting process. So I think that's really important for us as, board members, when we're talking to our people that we, rub shoulders with on a daily.
It's hard for us too, because
This is why this one site, because everyone knows about, block 50, right? It's just an eyesore,
right,
so.
yeah,
we speak to that.
that's the struggle that we have too. So there's the blighted condition that it's in because you have old buildings. And there's most likely, before we got involved, we got the sense that it wasn't probably gonna move on its own, so that's why we come in. So you're either gonna have like Green Sweet where it's this old building that sits for years. So we did what we could, and it was nice to see it fenced off, taken down, and we're making progress, but yeah, that right now it's hard, I drive that every day. And so you look down there, and you're like, now that's our pit that we kind of still blighted in a different way. It has potential, but it is moving, and so it's hard to keep everyone appraised of like what's happening out there, and it's that it is moving, but we're just having to go through this period of making sure that we're ready to start construction and making sure that our developers on board and our contracts worked out.
I've given several people yourself.
Yeah.
Wow.
Call for it personally.
Here you go. Here's where he lives. So out of curiosity, how many stories is that building gonna be, and how many dwelling units are gonna be?
That's a good question. I don't have all, it's changing, so I don't really wanna nail that down. I wanted that one, it's 4 or 5 stories. Okay,
Good.
It'll be pretty tall.
Last I heard was 4, but it is changing, and they just kind of change again, the market conditions are changing. So they're still tweaking, so our next step is to do an MOU. which would sort of, lay out the groundwork. Is it MOU or are we doing a DDS?
It's the purchase and sale, so we've
We've gone back and forth on which.
yeah,
one
so
we're
we
doing.
have an MOU, memorandum of understandings, we're committed to that point, but now we're working through
So we're
what
doing the
that purchase
DDS
will
next.
look like, yeah.
So that's the stuff
And
that'll be,
DDF is-
and the DDF is our development agreement, so that's where it's gonna line out, that's gonna
Actions
say.
are.
I know, it's just,
So that's where you're gonna see in there, like, here's what they're gonna be providing and here's what we're providing, and that's all gonna be sort of what gets approved, and then that's gonna be the binding contract. And so at that point, then it's really easy to say, yep, they're gonna be providing, this type of housing or this many, or, this type of use, or they're phasing it, 1, 2, or things like that, that's all gonna be in there, that's getting negotiated out. Which is also why you sort of have a quiet period.
Sure.
You pick the developer and then you kind of start working through the negotiations, and then once that all gets approved, then stuff can start coming out, because until that point, the developer isn't gonna be putting stuff out there, and we
And they're doing
can't.
a lot of work too, so they had a pre-application conference recently, and that's one of those steps that you take approaching the permitting system. So you just wanna make sure that you're addressing everything tied to fire, public works, building and safety at a conceptual. So I would say that the concept is moving along. They're doing they're spending a lot of time, money and resources to get it to the point, to where they can keep it moving to build. So that's the other piece is while we're doing what we can to make sure the site's ready for them to build, they're doing that design, preparing for permitting.
nice.
And then there's block 45, which is to the south off of Front Street and Commercial Street. That's just north of City Hall, across the street. So there's the Green Creek that goes through. It's just north of Green Creek. That's another city project that's happening. It's actually right here. So if you're on the City Hall side, the ramps and everything, the stairs are already built to facilitate their path of Commercial Street. And it's not been the best run house either. That's one of those areas where it's, I was out there for this site when we were preparing our website to go out to do the solicitation for the developer. And we had drones that were going over to do the photography. And there was an encampment under there fighting fires. There's some smoke billowing out of the Commercial Street Bridge that goes over Spring Creek. So we had someone ran over to the fire department's right there and the fire truck came out and it was quite the activity. We had drones going and fire and a lot of things happening. But eventually that will punch through to this side. So you'll be able to go from east side of that area under Commercial Street through to Riverfront Park. So that's a public project that they're securing the contract now for the move forward with that. Yeah, so that'll be on this one, it's on the south side of the south of the wall. It goes through. So similar to block 50, this is one of those sites. There has been private interest in this, but it's never been development that's panned out. It's been strained with easements and it's just a really tight site. So
Excuse me, Tori, is this the site where was it Salem Hospital or maybe a private practice that was going to build for like aftercare?
yeah, there was like a
Marquee.
yeah.
Yeah, Marquee was close to, but it never panned out.
What were the reasons because the easements up back?
I'm not sure, there was just costs, I don't know, it's similar to what we're dealing with, like, as we talk to development. Now, it's, they see you're at a point in time where there's a market for it, and those things are shifting. So I'm not sure, if they were looking, I don't know, it was too big or too expensive, or,
Is it ready to go as far as like?
yeah, they've gotten to a point of permitting, I think, but it was just never still
So someone
sat
just
there.
needs to-
So it's one of those where it's has potential, but it hasn't really ever moved. And,
Across from the goose.
oh, no, what kind of, so you see Park Place
You know
right
what I'm
there?
talking about, okay.
Yeah, Mark, yeah, so it's
Caddy corner
across,
from the convention center, it's that little, right over there.
yeah,
The
it's
Goose
across
Convention
from,
Center,
so.
site, City Hall.
What's the what's the square footage of that one?
I do have that information, but I can bring it up, so.
It's great, that was just out of curiosity, I can look it myself.
Okay, yeah, we have a dedicated website to it that has all that information.
Yeah, you can't do anything behind the redo of the walls. without the owner putting in a retaining wall that will suffice for parking or building. And there was a lot of morass and stupidity related to that.
I love that.
Like that always has a fun background in engineering, you kind of just love
I
that.
spent 3 years
I love it.
trying to get the city to share ownership with Larry Tokarski to get that ding. And then we could have kept the plateau that we had, the old Boise
Yes.
plant.
Yes.
I envisioned in my mind that that would be food carts, something that could be removed in a flood and tied under the railroad into riverfront. Basically the development you're now talking about, but you could never achieve because it was below floodplain. You can't replicate it now. Once that got an excavator, your opportunities for a San Antonio style improvement to the creek went sayonara. But there was an attitude of imposing to private development the costs that were extraordinary for that whole vision. Just weren't partnered. And that means Marquis, Tokarski, whomever, the last people have looked at the site, get discouraged by the improvement costs that are associated with
Makes
all of that.
sense.
It's real difficult to get vehicles in and out of this. Because you've got the setbacks and vision. And then you have to make up for the height differential that's occurring as you're heading commercial. And so it eats up a lot of your potential parking space or whatever you put on it. It's a tough site, and it's even tougher now that you can't put something right behind the wall. I had envisioned that we were gonna tie back that concrete wall that was there, that 20-inch chunk.
Yes.
And we could tie it back into the soil and preserve that volume so that you can put vehicles behind it. This is just stacked, concrete block. And it can retain earth, but it can't take a wheel load or a building load. So any improvement that fully utilizes that footprint has to pick that up. Then you have I don't know if it's been disproved, whether or not you have any chemicals from the storage tanks that were out there.
And so was the
Below
old
grade.
Boise,
Yeah.
we do have, it's no further action now, but it's a similar situation if you were to do, if you were to go below that point, depending on the use. So it is at a point where we can build up, but if we have to do earthwork or do something down below.
I think we had pretty much a 2-foot envelope. You can do stuff. But you gotta be dealing with not going below 2 feet because it was unknown. It wasn't, it literally is unknown whether it's there or not. So it really hampered people, because most any development there wants to be pretty close to that finished grade. If you bring it up, then you just transfer your problem to the Front Street interface. So, yeah, it's tough. It's a tough one. But it also, if a vision of that concept were to, you could basically go from Willamette to the riverfront without ever hitting a public street. It would be really cool.
Very fun.
Just follow through. So we went through most of this, in the fall last year, we received 6 developer responses. We've had evaluation committees, the first one involved, Downtown Advisory Board. We brought in City Council to regional agency for the second evaluation, so went from 6 to 3 finalists. And we've had 2 developer finalists they've been resting on, but since then, so this is where it's a bit, on my end, I want to keep things moving. But the politics have shifted, so I'm trying to keep it moving, and in the meantime, there's new council, new mayor, everything coming online, so now we're doing a bit of catch up. Like, they have a lot happening with budget and a lot of these development sites, and so now they're stepping back and saying, too much, let's talk about this before we commit. So.
It's only been empty for 75,000 years.
Well, so now we're,
We haven't owned it for all 75,000.
yeah, we wanna get at it, yeah. we wanna have-
Oh, okay, gotcha.
74,000 is on us.
Yeah, only for a few years. So we do have a couple of, it's in executive session, so basically, we can keep some things confidential tied to real estate transactions. And that's kind of where this is right now. So as soon as it gets to a point of entering into a memorandum of understanding with the developer, then it'll become public information. So we have to get to that point first, so we'll keep talking with city council, I'll meet with the developers, have some questions they want to flush out. Hopefully we'll come back with some. So you have two possible scenarios. One scenario, with the development concepts that they proposed, they work toward one, they get into a contract with one and they keep it. Or the other one is they don't like any of them and they want to maybe use it for the Pringle Path project and then sell it. That could be one down. But I don't want to give you false hope that we're close to narrowing it down from the two to the one and years. It could be that. So.
Yeah. Well, when that does happen in the next 20 years, it'll be cool to see what goes there, because I think a lot of people have been wondering. Just because it's just a cool area, like the old city hall, and then going underneath all the different paths and so on and so forth. I used to run those. So that connectivity.
Well, the Pringle Path, that'll keep moving. That's a city project, so that will. I don't remember their time frame. I want to say that they plan to start construction in 2028. So they have a while to get everything situated to start that.
That'll be fun. It's always fun to see new construction going on downtown.
As far as downtown grants, just some, you probably see a lot of improvements to buildings. We try to have our blue sign out there. This had the fencing sign up for a while. Well, not the fencing, but so this is on Court Street, where the historic building was improved and now it's a boutique, couple boutique shops and housing. So just like in West Salem and North Gateway, our urban grants that help with development work. Anything else on downtown? Questions? Downtown?
The corner of I'm directionally challenged. It's right across from Olson Forest. It's on the corner across from the courthouse. Used to be a restaurant that it's next to the Grand Theater, right on the corner. That restaurant was being utilized, then all of a sudden it wasn't. And the houselessness are piling up. And it's really probably just because it's like all directions you can see it. You guys help me out. It was the
It's not up above the, what was that?
It was something for years and then it just transited for not very long and then.
Yep,
Or
yeah.
it's Court and High.
thank you.
Yeah, Court High, yeah, it's an old wine tasting area.
Are
They're not really accumulated, just occasionally have campers underneath the awnings. Like they have like similar to some of the areas in downtown, there's like a wall knockout where there's perfectly available for the person to lay.
And the only reason why I bring this up is just my location now. I'm walking and they're there kind of all hours of the day, mostly in the mornings. But I'm wondering, have we heard on who's gonna jump in to that?
Oh, I don't know who.
Or the old Rudy's?
that's still under. That's just still under, there's legal things tied to all of that, so it's still our space and we're still dealing with contracts and things and whatnot. At the point in time when we can have it available for a new user, then I think there'll be probably a process to put it out there, because there have been inquiries of people interested in the space, but it's a little more complicated to just taking all this stuff out and there's other vendors that have claims to things and whatnot, so there's a legal process. that
Got
has to
it.
happen.
We have to do improvements to the building too, so the atrium is old and not in the best shape. So we have budgeted for this next year. I don't know what the timing is as far as like actually doing the work, but that would be, yeah, before we enter into.
And the parking
contract
has
for-
to get painted on that side, it was prevented because of all their outdoor space. Last summer, when they repainted all the parking structure, they need to get up there and paint all that, so a lot of that work will be happening too, I believe, this summer.
Just curious about this.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything as far as that space being a new tenant. But start at Mill Creek, it's easier to see on the map, so I'll only get up there yet. Start my GIS software in West Salem because most of our discussion is in West Salem. So the Mill Creek Corporate Center, it was a partnership with the state. It's used to be corrections land, so back in several decades, there were plans to build additional correctional facilities that now policies be like share that throughout the state, not have it consolidated in Salem. So as a result of that, there was state surplus land, just that they contract with farmers to do dry farming and use it for that purpose. So we work with them, identifying a need to have shovel-ready large lot industrial land. So it's basically this whole area off of 22 along Corridon. So we've had to do improvements to, there's north to south, started with Home Depot. Now there's the Amazon facility out there, so we built, I think, extend all the infrastructure, depot port, water sewer. Basically, with a renewal comes as tax growth happens, and now here where it's state land, there's no tax. So we had to take out loans with the state that were forgivable with job growth at the time to get those properties shovel ready. And it really is helpful as far as that being shovel ready means that Home Depot or Amazon, we've done like the infrastructure, we've done the wetland mitigation, environmental. We spent several years getting all that property ready to go so that they can just go through the permitting process and break ground. They're usually in within a year. So it can go pretty fast, but to make that happen, there's so much work that goes up front to make it okay. So we've seen that develop, Home Depot and then Amazon. There's another property to the south of Amazon over there that's owned by Pac Trust. I don't know yet what they plan to do with that property. They've also developed spec buildings all through, as you keep going south across Almsville, along Almsville, and Corridon, they have their buildings out there. They also just built some new buildings similar to what they have on Almsville along Truax. So at the time that they built those buildings, they built Truax. And so we'll work in those situations. We have a development district out there. So when system development charges, instead of them, they just like a new development would pay in the system development charges. It's not a fixed, like a targeted location. In a situation where it's targeted, so we want new development, they pay into those system development charges to be going to infrastructure here to get the next properties online. And so with the use of tax increment funds and development district funds, we'll partner with the developers as they're building buildings. Our public works department to make sure that the streets are being built to standard. and they'll go do it. So that was true with Truax, and that's also been true with Dollar General. So if you go out there now, I'll try to see if I can show them. Here we go.
So developed.
If you go out there now, it's changed a lot. So you can see, it used to be all farmland, basically. And that's one of those areas too, where it's like, okay, urban renewal is supposed to be used for blight. Well, we're in Oregon where you have urban growth boundaries. You're supposed to build in urban growth boundaries to protect the farmland and the natural resources outside of it. So in this case, it's the utilization of your land supply. So we use it as a tool to make it so that you can, in this case, we had an economic development deed. So we leveraged that tool to happen. So these are those elements, these spec buildings that work for Pac Trust, FedEx, facility in the middle, Truax Street. We, as part of our wetland mitigation process, so there are wetlands on all these sites because it's so flat. And so we had to go through the process of, and at that time, instead of, there's a few different approaches you can take to build wetlands through the state. In this case, we were able to build 100 acres basically of centralized wetland. So if you go out there, it's like this parkway, pretty nice. We have a trail system now that goes the full length. So residents around there and businesses, employees, they can walk. I'll try to make this clear because I'm getting close to time. So it's getting pretty close to built out now. We have Dollar General. I don't know when they'll open up and start hiring. The work is pretty much done. Gensco's there, just to the west of Corbin College. So we're getting to a point now where we're paying off our loans with the state that we use to start the development. So once that's done, we'll pretty much utilize the whole more tax increment funding. And so similar to McGilchrist, they'll stay open and finish work. We won't be able to collect anymore. The tax and jurisdiction that pass through will happen to them, which will be considerable. This is, like I said, this was a state land surplus, so it was not taxable. So this will be pretty good benefit. So it's one of those things where now when there's this conversation, urban renewal areas, the tax increments funding affects the general fund. Well, I mean, yeah, in the future, like in this case, you can see it as you're keeping funding from the general fund. Well, that didn't exist. Anyway, any questions on Mill Creek? If you go out there, there's a lot happening. If you go out to Costco, traveling on Gordon's always a fun one anyway because it loops around, so you can see a lot of things on outside of Salem.
Yeah, a lot of development. It's different. Questions?
So no meeting in July
Oh,
since it's so close. And that next meeting will be August 6th. That's when you, with the fiscal year is when you have like the chair. Samantha will be terming out, so you'll have to pick a new chair, but she'll be hopefully joining us still, filling the position until I think it's building in. Now she's
I'm
down.
already turned out, so I'm still there.
Yeah, she represents downtown now, so hopefully she'll stay on that one. It's kind of a hard one. to
Yeah.
push.
Turned out, buddy. But 24.
Don't feel bad, we have the same thing in North Gateway. I just don't let people leave anymore. I'm like, you just stay here, and after a year, you can reapply.
yeah.
Because if you turned out, then it didn't have it. After a year, you reapplied, and now he's back on the street.
I'll definitely.
I like
stay.
it incognito.
Interesting.
So if you don't like the answer, you can.
Yeah, well, that wasn't part of it. I didn't vote on that.
So I think, with that being said, I gotta jump out. I've got a meeting at work, but, we have 2 available, seats, 3. So I would really encourage everyone, if you know someone that would be interested in what we talk about, that's obviously in the area, please encourage them to join the board. I brought in a couple different people and it's, I think it's been favorable, good information if anything. So, encourage you guys know some people at work or just in your neighborhood, what have you, it'd be amazing. I'm giving Tori's cell phone number.
No, you can. In fact, Zachary mentioned someone shared, so I'm a bit separated as far as like the application process goes to the city manager's office, but you can direct them to me and I can help facilitate like who they have to talk to, how you apply, those kind of things.
For sure.
You should get done
Okay,
tomorrow.
perfect.
Yeah, we could really use some
Yeah.
West End business.
Well, this person is also a resident of,
Yeah, you said
Nice.
nice water area.
Yeah, that would be
That's good.
helpful.
yeah.
Confidential.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, until they apply, I guess, but.
That's awesome.
It's up to you.
We are adjourned. Any
Yeah.
questions, you guys? Any questions? We're still live?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for the information. Yes, absolutely.